Before we start the motivation, the short meditation we usually do in the beginning, I want to ask you something. We have still some section left, 8 pages in the text. It's not super important, but when I prepared the text, this was for a longer course and people wanted to know about it, so I added it to the material. When you read it on your own, you'll understand. I was wondering, how about I start with giving some general advice. Just talk about some things, how this is practical in everyday life. Take your questions, and if at some point I'm done saying what I would like to say, you're done with your questions, then we can go through it. Because I've tortured you a lot. I mean, this is difficult material, right? Torture means I've done a lot. So the last bit, it's not super important. Again, if you read it, you get some understanding. Plus, I'll do it as soon as we're done with that part. But just to be sure we have enough time, that's what I would like to do. So you're all in agreement? Great. All right. So let's start, of course, once again from a psychological point of view to make our mind most receptive. It's okay. You're not too late. I was early actually. So from a psychological point of view, let's make the most out of it, of course, by doing this short meditation we always do. Starting with breathing meditation, just some mindfulness meditation. And then visualize our object of refuge in the space in front of you, in the form of Buddha Shakyamuni. Whose nature is, of course, the nature of our Lama or Lamas. Guiding us through their examples and their teachings. Inspiring us to strive to attain the same state. To be aware for whose benefit we're striving towards Buddhahood. Visualize that you're surrounded by each and every sentient being. Remembering it's only through their kindness, through their mere existence, that we can become Buddhas. Sentient beings have been so kind to us in endless past lives. They're so kind to us now, providing us with everything we need on a daily basis to survive. Providing us with knowledge, education, giving us the opportunity to practice patience, generosity, and so forth. Giving us the opportunity to have limitless love and compassion for them. So truly kind and so important. In fact, equally important to our Lama, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. In order to try to repay the incredible sacrifice, incredible kindness, let's generate an intense aspiration or even determination to work towards becoming fully enlightened. However hard it may be, however long it may take, for our own benefit, and most importantly, for the benefit of every single sentient being. Holding on to the visualization, and now letting go of bodhicitta. Let's recite a prayer together. Sangye chodam sobi chonanda chanchu padu dani kyapsuchi taki jinso kibe sonamgi drola penche sangye drokasho. Sangye chodam sobi chonanda chanchu padu dani kyapsuchi taki jinso kibe sonamgi drola penche sangye drokasho. Sangye chodam sobi chonanda chanchu padu dani kyapsuchi taki jinso kibe sonamgi drola penche sangye drokasho. Okay. Well, first of all, I actually want to thank all of you for giving me the opportunity to get to know all of you. This beautiful idea of appointments and having meeting people and spending time with all of you has been so precious. Of course, I recognize myself in many of you, in the things you've said, and it just made me feel so much closer to everyone. And it became more obvious the incredible potential, because you guys are really hardworking and very open to the Dharma. So many follow the Nalanda program because you're following such a wonderful teacher, Geshe Kelsang. But also you have this amazing teacher, Geshe Kelsang Wangmo. You don't know this. He's also one of my teachers. I once went, we used to go with my classmates at the IVD. Our association is with Jepun Noseling. All our teachers are from Jepun Noseling. So they have this winter debate on logic. And my classmates would go for that, and I went with them. I was a little restricted as a woman, but I found ways to still debate with the monks. They just came to my room to debate. I asked different ones on different days, so they only had to come one every 2 weeks. So I had 14 different monks who came to my room, and I debated with them. So I couldn't go to the debate ground, but I got to debate. So all these different ways. Anyway, in Geshe Yunjin, one of my best friends is his cousin. So we're very close. We lived together in the same nunnery. And so through her, I knew Geshe Yunjin, and I asked him for teachings, and he taught me Vatika. He's very kind, very great teacher, amazing teacher. And I was so happy to hear when he came here, that he's your teacher. Because of course his English has really improved, he has learned English really well, and his knowledge, I have no need to talk about it. So amazing. So there's a strong connection I have with this center for many reasons, especially because your main teacher is also my teachers. So, we are like Dharma brothers and sisters in the literal sense of the word. Anyway, but the opportunity to talk to you has been so amazing because it's really helpful to know what to address of the little that I learned to go into more details on this. So one thing, the first thing I'm going to say is about how to meditate on this material. I already said quite a bit, but purposely I left out a few things because I didn't want you to start with this other instruction right away. I thought it's better to get you to just meditate on trying to find the I, trying to find something inherently existent, without giving you the opportunity to right away look at how things do exist. Because that is an affirmative part of understanding reality. And since we're affirming all the time, we're always looking at how do things exist, and we actually exaggerate the mode of existence of things. It's good to first... I just met the youngest Sangha. Anyway, so I just... So because we always affirm anyway, I thought to wait with this part that I'm going to talk about now. Okay. So, first of all, the question has come up on several occasions that when we meditate on, for instance, the I think you're all doing a really good job. I mean, look at the object, try to identify the object of negation, which is, of course, the way the I appears to us, in particular in stressful situations. When it's stressful, like stressful can mean when someone praises you, that can also be stressful. Like, oops, turning all red and, blushing away and like, anyway, or like being insulted or being accused of something we haven't done. Again, stressful situation. They also talk about walking along an abyss and fearing to fall down or something, like the feeling of, right? So here you don't have many abysses, but you've got high rises. So you could just stand at an edge and think, I would fall, right? So a very strong sense of I. And then when you search for it, you don't find it. And often the response is then, have I fallen into the extreme of nihilism? Well, to fall into the extreme of nihilism, you perceive the non-existence of the self in that moment. That is not. When you meditate, you're searching for an inherent I and can't find it. But when you're done meditating and you now reflect on what just appeared to me, to our mind it seems I just perceive the non-existence of myself in general. Or if it's another person, your teacher, whoever, there's a sense, I just denied their existence. But that's actually not what you did. It's only when we think of ourselves, we think of an inherently existent self. And when we refute the inherently existent self, we're not left with anything because we have no experience of the conventional I, which can only be understood once you've understood emptiness. Once you know that the self doesn't exist inherently, then can you know that it exists conventionally, that it is a conventional truth. So just because a table is a conventional truth and I know a table, doesn't mean that I know the table is a conventional truth or is conventionally existent. This is very important. Okay, that it's merely labeled. We don't know that. The first step, therefore, is to try to find it. And then when you arise from that practice and you look at what did just appear to me? Oh, that was no self. To us, like the way we look at it, not inherently existent is the same as not existent at all. But do you have to worry about falling into the extreme of nihilism? No, that's different. It's like when you totally believe there's nothing there. When you fall into this, like, there's nothing there. And all you need to do is, what's the word? Pinch yourself. Just pinch yourself, right? Or look around. Or don't eat the whole day. When your stomach goes, there's something there. The point is that now, after you didn't find something, now you need to reflect on dependent arising. So that same I that previously didn't appear, this still has arisen from causes and conditions. Your body has arisen from the chromosomes of your parents. Your mind is the result of your former continuum of a mind from a previous life. So you've arisen in dependence on causes and conditions. You have many parts. There are many physical parts. So you change into the domain of the conventional perception. I talked about it yesterday. The domain of the ultimate, the perceptual domain of the ultimate, the perceptual domain of the conventional. Now your conventional mind becomes active, thinking about the dependence on parts and the dependence on labeling. So when you do that, then of course the inherently existent I will appear again, which is when you switch back to the meditation on emptiness. Now I'm not saying you have to do that the whole day, switch the whole time. I mean, if you're in a serious retreat, of course, within one session you could divide it 20 minutes, 20 minutes. But even if you do your practice, let's say in the morning, you could do 5 minutes searching for the I, 5 minutes reflecting on its dependent arising until the mind again goes back to the inherent I. Then you go back to searching for the inherent I. You don't find it, and you change back to dependent arising. So when you alternate between the two, first they seem contradictory. The two minds seem to be contradictory. But as Lama Tsongkhapa says, for instance, in his 3 principal aspects of the path, when you no longer see the two as contradictory, that from one perspective the self cannot be found through ultimate analysis, through another perspective, on a conventional level, it does exist as an interdependent phenomenon. When those two are no longer seem contradictory, then you know emptiness. So just not finding the object of negation is not enough. Not finding the object of negation is not enough to understand emptiness. Emptiness and dependent arising have to become compatible. So you learn about this. This is, of course, the first step. And once you've learned about it, you now put it into practice. If you spend just 5 days every day, that means an hour and 5 minutes every week. That means 30 hours and more every month. That is a lot. So just these 5 minutes. Don't think either I meditate for 5 hours or not at all. Oftentimes we feel like, what's the point? You know, one thing that we don't realize, when you think of a meditator, a hermit, up in the mountains of Tibet, up in the mountains of Dharamsala, they're not always in meditation. In fact, when I first became a nun, the area around the Klaganj wasn't as heavily populated with hotels everywhere, which meant that many of the meditators lived in close proximity because there was a lot of empty land and it was quiet. So you could actually walk to your home. For instance, I lived near Toshita for a few months in the Elysium House. It's called Elysium House. Now it's part of the Goenka group. I used to live there and I would walk past these meditators. So you could see them. And many of them just sat out in the sun doing nothing. Are you good at doing nothing? Very difficult for a modern person to not be productive. Right? Doing nothing. That's really hard for us. So when I say doing nothing, they were reflecting on the Dharma in a very relaxed way. I'm sure the Dharma was on their mind, but it wasn't like they were writing something or they were sitting there and could say, I did this meditative session or that. No, they're just very relaxed. Maybe just watch their mind. I mean, I don't know what they did. Watch their mind and we're just, very relaxed. But we have this sense we have to be productive, we have to do something. I mean, we're so attached to look at the end of the day and say, produce this, produce that. Just sometimes being with our own mind, not needing to achieve anything, but just be and watch what's going on. It's the best practice. In fact, I told one of you the other day, and I told you a story. Just briefly after I finished my studies, I was sitting outside one of the coffee places or tea places in Maklakash near the main temple. Many of you will walk past it. I was sitting there with some friends. Geshe was Yönten's cousin. She was one of them. And she is super honest. She's amazing. That's why I love her. She never pretends. She's straight and tells you, the one. Yeah. So anyway, or many of you know her anyway. But the point is that I sat there and this monk comes by who was my schoolmate. He was in the lower class. And he had just graduated and he walked by and he stood just a moment to say hi. So we talked a little and I said, so what are you doing? And he said, nothing. And I'm like, nothing? And my friend, she kicked me underneath the table. Kind of like, you better shut up. And I knew, and I was like, nothing. I tried to save the situation. So, great, you're doing nothing. That's good. How much nothing do you do? No, I'm kidding. I didn't say that. So I tried to save face and kind of like, okay, and he was a little, oops, and he took off. And then my friend was like, you should know by now. It's okay to do nothing. And I'm like, yeah, right, of course, I should know. But that was such a good lesson. I never forgot. And I was reminded, of course. Also, the meditators that I saw so many times. And my teacher also told me the same thing. I asked my teacher a lot of the times, like, what do these hermits do? Are they the whole time in retreat? He said, no, they do have retreats. But oftentimes, they just don't do anything. They don't keep busy the whole time. So for their mind to calm down, right? If you just sit there and don't do anything, right? Don't have a schedule, don't have an appointment, just to learn to do nothing. And they do a lot in a monastery. I mean, let's not forget, there's a tight schedule, there's a lot of discipline. So as part of their practice, it's just doing nothing. Not being productive, not having the I go, well done you, once again, well produced, right? As we do automatically. That's part of the practice. So sometimes just sitting there, this is part of our practice, not doing anything, just watching our mind. And sitting comfortably, they sit in the sun, by the way, because I can see them. Now, also talking to you has been very helpful because, of course, at this day and age, there's so many distractions. So one distraction is watching movies. And if it's not movies, it's YouTube clips that are produced in such a way, as I've been told by one of you, that they create an attachment. You want to see the next one, you want to see the next one. So how can we deal with this? It is kind of a waste of time. But after I talked to this person, I remembered something. I used to teach students from Emory University that would come for like a study program, and they love watching movies. There's nothing I could do. Desperate Housewives. I remember they went on and on about Desperate Housewives. I didn't even know who are these Desperate Housewives. That was something they loved. That was in the beginning of 2006. That's when they taught the first group. So I thought, okay, I'm not going to stop them from watching movies. They're not children. I cannot stop them. They were like in their 20s. 19, 20, 21. So I decided to make it an assignment. They had to watch the movie, and they had already studied philosophy for some time. So Four Noble Truth, Impermanence, Emptiness. They were introduced to all of these in a very short kind of fashion. And now they had to present this movie and describe the Dharma in there. So impermanence, or dependent arising, or cause and effect, the Four Noble Truth. And so I thought, in that way, they're going to watch this movie with the Dharma in the back of their mind. They analyze it in the back of their mind, and they watch in a different way. And I did the same thing myself because I wanted to find out whether it actually works. And so I didn't enjoy the movie in the same way, but my mind was really active. There's, so you can learn. You see the Dharma is not outside of ourselves. The Dharma is in everywhere in our life. And the movies, they describe the Dharma. Impermanence, the Four Noble Truth, emptiness, conventional truth. And the students were really good at it. I got to watch a lot of movies as part of the assignment. The thing was, they only showed excerpts. We couldn't watch the whole movie. So they had to show like 10 minutes, search the scenes they found most significant, but still note down the whole movie and write what is the main topic, right? So I had a list of what were the topics that they found in the movie, and only show and share and interpret it with the group for 10 minutes in class. It was great. Something Backham, Kicking Like Backham or something. There was a movie. I watched that. There was a lot of Dharma in that. And What the Bleed Do We Know? Though that's obvious, there's a lot of Dharma in there. I don't know whether you know this movie, What the Bleed Do We Know? It's I think it's Dustin Hoffman is in there, and it's like more of a documentary showing how there's so many illusions in our daily life and how things don't exist as solidly as we may think. I think it also introduces the idea that our mind can influence reality when you have water and it freezes into crystals. And if you have positive thoughts, they look very harmonious. They have a very beautiful structure, a very symmetric structure. While if you freeze them while looking at them with negative thoughts, the crystals are not as symmetric. It's an interesting phenomenon that a Japanese artist came up with. And there have been a lot of, people think of Hitler, and it's not pretty, that structure. And they think of Mother Teresa, and it's very harmonious. So it's how our thoughts actually influence reality. So that was easy for that movie. Anyway, so that's an exercise we could do if you really want to have that entertainment. Well, search for the Dharma in a gentle way. Which of the concepts that I studied are depicted here? Can I find anything? So it can be actually fun. I found it's fun to look. Is it impermanence? What does it teach? If I had to teach based on that movie, I had to teach the Dharma, what would come to mind? And there's so much. And that is very helpful because then we bring the Dharma into our daily life. We see it's everywhere. The examples are everywhere. It's not the Dharma over here and daily life there. So it's like when people ask me this, and this is a typical question that I'm asked, well, since you don't live the real life, and I'm like, what is the real? Where do you think I am? On some kind of planet? Right? I'm just an ordinary person. Like I said, I recognize myself in all of you, you know? So it's like, I'm not somehow floating in the sky and kind of come down to earth when I have a class. I live the real life like everyone else. I have a routine, I have my challenges, I have to live with other people, my family, all the other nuns around me, and I can go away, you know, move away, but I'm also involved in that life, and sometimes it can be hard. Some are like difficult family members, and some are like close family members, and then I have my job, and where's the real life other than that? So the thing is, it's just like samsara, it's a samsaric life. But to recognize that within that samsaric life, there's the Dharma. It's everywhere. And that's our job. And maybe through watching some movies, right, you can start there. Because that's when all you need to do is watch. You don't need to interact. So your focus can be on the movie. That would be another way to deal with like an excessive, or even not excessive, movie watching, right? You may have to watch it with your partner, with your family. Well, just apply the Dharma. They won't notice. Okay. Great. So that's one thing. But going back to the meditation. Okay, so you meditate, as I said, on can't find the I, right? And it's pretty straightforward. Just need to do it. It's a little boring, so spice it up. Do it a little differently every time. Yeah, to generate, of course, and I said that before, the beginner's mind. As if you were to do it for the first time and you want to do it just right. And for instance, this holiness sometimes also talks about there's no Dalai Lama, there's no essence. And you may feel like, oh, my guru disappeared. That's terrible. But then remember, if your guru existed the way he appeared to you, then he couldn't be a guru. So now you're recognizing nothing has changed. This is still the person who was there before, but now you perceive them correctly. But if you have the sense, oh, they don't exist, then you go to dependent arising. Causes and conditions, parts, labeling, right? So the moment you feel they're gone, but I didn't want to say that right away because then too early we go into, we don't give the time, we don't want to do the searching. We leave that part out. So we just do dependent arising, and then we end up with an inherently dependently arising guru or I. That's the problem. So to actually spend some time and be okay with it. All right, so it feels like there's nothing there. But don't worry, you haven't fallen into the extreme of nihilism because you don't live your life as if nothing existed. I mean, you just don't jump off a building thinking, I don't exist and the building doesn't exist, kind of thing. Instead, now, okay, couldn't find it, now go back to dependent arising. But for each of these periods, alternating between emptiness and dependent arising, emptiness, dependent arising, very important, an emotional response. Because if it's up in your head, it's dry, it's boring. Sooner or later, you grow tired of it. Now, initially, what would be an emotional response after not finding the I? What could be an emotional response? Wow, right? Oh, I couldn't find it. In the beginning, it won't arise. You have to fake it. But that's okay. That's okay. Just go, wow, this is amazing. Just try to trigger that in your mind. Remember I talked about, maybe yesterday or the day before, even when you're stressed, for instance, when you're terribly stressed, I gave you the example of when I took exams once and I was so stressed, especially because my classmates, they were native Tibetan speakers. They didn't have the same hard time to do all the memorizations and so forth, or to write it, without spelling mistakes. So it was really hard for me and I was stressed out. But then I remember the psychological method that is totally in accordance with Buddhism, to just think, this is great, this is challenging, bring some more stress, I love it. Just thinking that, without allowing the little voice in the back of your mind, no, this is fake. No, it's in my own hand. This mind who thinks that's fake is not helpful. You shut up better, you better be quiet. I'm not suppressing it, I'm just saying you're not helpful. This mind is not helpful. So I just didn't allow it to take over. So I just tried it. Oh, this is great, this is wonderful, this stress is really good, it keeps me going, I'm energized. And I made myself smile even, because I read somewhere, just if you smile, it releases chemicals in your body that take care of the stress. So I sat there smiling and thinking, great, and everything became easy. It really worked. I faked it, but I was no longer stressed, I was calm, which is why I also understood why Lama Zopa Rinpoche's meditation on rejoicing worked. Lama Zopa Rinpoche, for those who were not here yesterday, he made a whole prayer hall in Tushita. It was full with new Dharma students. First, rejoice in the Buddhas. No one is jealous of the Buddha, so that was easy. Rejoice in the Buddha's activities, in people that you don't know, anyone you're not jealous of in general. And there's this wave of happiness and rejoicing. And you're like in the flow of rejoicing in all the activities. And of course, Lama Zopa Rinpoche guides you, everyone else is doing the same. So you don't get bored, you're like really enjoying doing this meditation. And then he says, and now you bring in someone who you're jealous of. You're feeling so good, you're not going to stop there and just start being jealous now. No, you're feeling really good with this meditation, so you just include them. And suddenly, you feel really good about them. It's gone. There's no threat. It's wonderful. You can actually rejoice. And I said, I asked the people afterwards, they all said exactly that they couldn't be jealous in that moment. And it worked. They just rejoiced in everyone else. And it was like, why was I jealous? I'm not saying that they didn't go back to being, but the point is they got a taste of it. And it's so much easier then to understand that even this method Lama Zopa Rinpoche, which he applied, it was not through analytical meditation. It was basically faking it. Faking it means in the sense you didn't really feel it, but he brought this feeling in your mind, and then you got a taste of it, and you want to continue this, and you realize you can just control your mind in that way. Having understood this, it works in the same way. You do the meditation, can't find it, and just go, wow. Right? Think of a time when you were really like, wow, you were really moved, and bring that feeling of being moved. Before long, it becomes real. Before long, if you do it long enough, you actually are moved. And that's when you've internalized what you've learned. That's when it really affects you. But one more thing that I haven't mentioned yet is this. First, you do, as part of this alternating between searching for the I, not finding it, and then, of course, focusing on the dependent arising. When you're in that state of not finding it, and now you're trying to trigger that emotion, however much of an effort you first have to make, it doesn't arise naturally. Maybe it does, but if it doesn't, you make it arise. And then you focus on that feeling, single-pointedly. You leave the analytical meditation and focus on that feeling. Just focus on it. It kind of sinks. I don't know how to put it into words, because of course it's not a physical phenomenon, it's just a mind. But it sinks deeper. You focus on it and it goes deeper. Any feeling, even when you're angry, right? If you just focus on your anger, just allow the anger, in other words, just allow the anger to be in your mind, it goes deeper. The more it's in your mind, the deeper it goes, the more it affects you. So I'm not saying watch the anger and what it looks like. Don't watch the emotion and start analyzing the emotion. That would get rid of the emotion, basically, just as the anger goes away when we focus on the anger itself. I'm more saying single-pointedly means just let the emotion be there. Just let the emotion. Sometimes they say if you come to some kind of conclusion, just focus on that. right? So it just depends. Usually they say like focus on the insight you got. But I think it is the insight with the emotion. It is the insight, so not there, and you're moved. You're like, wow, it's not there. So you abide in that. Focus on it's not there, that's the conclusion you come to, but let the emotion remain. Don't let it slide. So with this emotion, so focusing on the emotion is not the right term. Abide in the emotion is probably a better way of saying it. Abide in the emotion while focused on the conclusion you've come to. So that emotion and the conclusion, both of them help you to access a deeper level. Does that make sense? Yeah. So this is how Geshe Kelsang basically has explained, and many meditators talk about it in the sense you have to have a feeling and some kind of conclusion you focus on. So when they say feeling, Tibetans don't really have a word for emotions. They use a word when I talk with scientists, but ordinarily in the context of philosophy, they just say you have to have a feeling. So some type of emotional response, in other words. Again, so you focus on, can't find the self, okay, not findable. Then allow a feeling, an emotion to arise, and the conclusion is it's not there, so you focus on it's not there without analyzing, but you abide in that feeling. Let the feeling remain. Okay, once that's done for some time, so really there are different aspects. Analytical, so first it's an intellectual meditation, analyzing until you come to the conclusion it's not there. Emotional response, abiding in this emotion while focusing on the conclusion, single point of view. Okay? And you do this for some time, let it go. When you rise from that meditation, you can have thoughts, you have different thoughts. Okay, maybe there's a sense, ooh, there's no self there, because that's how it seems to us. Because when we arise, we negated the inherent I, and since the existent I and the inherent I for us are the same, if you negate the inherent I, you negate I. In actuality, your mind didn't do that, but when you arise from the meditation and you reflect on your ordinary I, you have a sense, I just fell into the extreme of nihilism. You didn't fall into the extreme of nihilism. You have a nihilistic idea in that moment, but you now counteract it by analyzing dependent arising. Taking the self that you just previously couldn't find and just remind yourself, but that's how it appears, but in actuality it's dependent on causes and conditions. Just reflect on the causes and conditions. Don't worry too much about how the self appears, but just put your mind in that direction. It has arisen from the parents, the mind comes from a previous life, then there are parts, it's dependent on parts, right? The mind, the different body parts, the different types of consciousness, and then it's labeled. On the basis of that, we label I, or we label His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So then it becomes solid again. Again, the sense of like a dependently arisen, existent person. I shouldn't say solid, but like a dependently arisen, existing person. So we come to the conclusion, it exists. The conclusion is a dependently existent object. Again, emotion. Fake it if you need to. Wow, he does exist, fully functioning. Functioning as an I or as a guru in the case of His Holiness. So, there's an emotion, there is the conclusion, it exists independence. Focus on that again, while abiding in that emotion. Okay? Do that for some time. Again, come out of it. Go back to emptiness. If you do that every day, 5 minutes analyzing the self, 5 minutes dependent arising, 5 minutes analyzing the self, 5 minutes, so 5 minutes emptiness, 5 minutes dependent arising, or to say it in other words, 5 minutes ultimate truth, 5 minutes of conventional truth in terms of dependent arising, go back to ultimate truth. If you do this 5 minutes every day, you have 20 minutes. That's a lot. If you do that for a year, I want to meet you after a year. I want to see how your life has changed. Right? And then you don't have to always do it. You can just, if you have a comfortable sofa, in my mind, a comfortable sofa means something to rest against and stretch your legs. Sit straight. Right? You can sit like that. Think of the meditators who sit out in the sun. Yeah, and rest their back. So, if you want to do shamatha, you better be in a certain kind of environment. But for analytical meditation, it's not absolutely necessary. And oftentimes, that's when you're most relaxed. That's when your mind is calm, relaxed, happy. That's when you meditate. Don't worry about having to sit this way or the other. That's not important. Lying down, in my case, I get sleepy. So I wouldn't want to lie down, but I'm propped up. Yeah? Like in Germany, for instance, I have this roof that comes all the way down. That's my room. And I have this big cushion. I lie down like this, there's this thing, like this kind of roof coming down on me. And I just sit and I reflect on things. It's great. I don't control my mind as much. I just allow for it to run. And then when I do my practice, sometimes I also control it in the way I just described. And it's incredible what you can do with your mind. I mean, I'm a total beginner. I have no idea what I'm doing. But the little bit I do, it gives me the confidence the sky's the limit. And you can all do it. All of you can do it. Yeah, but you don't need to put yourself through a lot of hardship. That's not the point, Don't go through ascetic practices. The Buddha has taught us. Ascetic practices are just one extreme. So the sitting is the least of your problems. Sit the way you feel comfortable. And then sometimes you could sit in that way when you do shamatha for a few minutes and just relax. So let's try it. You can all do it. Emptiness is not impossible to understand. And you went through how many years of schooling? That seems more impossible. Right? Everything you learned over so many years, it's amazing. You had to do it, but still you did. And the knowledge you now have, incredible. So there's no reason why you couldn't know about emptiness. Okay, that's what I wanted to say about the practice of what we learned. Now there were a lot of technical things and they were a little complicated. Last night, I could tell people were tired and I confused you with all the not and so forth. But the thing is, the next time you hear it, you understand it. Okay. But then what else? What other things that are important? Very practical in our daily life. One thing I mentioned before is the idea of criticizing someone. Or is there a better word for criticizing? Because that has kind of a negative connotation. Kind of like telling someone how we feel about them when it's not necessarily all positive. Right? And not in a way that hurts them. Not in a way that has the opposite effect. First of all, I think it's important to understand why criticism can really put people off, can make them defensive. Well, in a way such that, if I take myself as an example, I think I'm pretty aware of my mistakes to a certain degree. Some things I'm not aware of course. But the things that other people notice, I guess, if I'm honest, I'm also aware. But I'm also aware of some of my good sides. So if I think about it, there's a kind of a mixture between good and bad. Now, if someone were to say to me, you're bad in such and such way, to criticizes me, tells me the truth, in that moment, I may feel misunderstood because what about the good part? They're only focusing on the bad part, right? That's the problem with language. Language is very limited. We talked yesterday about the brain, remember? The split brain phenomenon of someone having this corpus callosum is cut. So the fibers are cut, and some people who have seizures. So when there's no communication between the right and the left brain, they just do their own thing. But when the left hemisphere of the brain becomes aware of what the right brain does, it starts making a story, right? It makes a story of what's going on. So that's basically similar to our conceptual mind narrating or labeling, basically. This is this, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. It's creating this coherence of an I, the story of an I. So it's labeling I. But even labeling I, just that label, is very limited. Words are so limited, they never fully express what's there. In particular, when the I is different in each moment, I say I, it's very limiting. And words, just as our thoughts are very limited, they can never catch the whole thing. So when we label means we have a thought. I'm doing such and such. But I'm very much simplifying everything, very much simplifying it. And we may believe in that simplicity that doesn't exist there. So when we criticize another person, or when we are criticized, we believe we're totally misunderstood. Because just saying you're selfish, or you're whatever, mean, when I was only mean for 2 minutes a day, I kind of feel misunderstood. Yes, I was mean. Maybe I was mean for 5 minutes, even for an hour. But wait a minute, 23 hours I wasn't mean. You see what I'm saying? So when we use labels, for instance, mean, even when someone else tells us about someone, that's a mean person. That reduces them to meanness. It reduces them down to just being that. But that's how our mind works. That's why also talking about other people, when we talk about other people, we have to be very careful, because we can truly influence them how they see this person. If I say, I don't know, Chinese name, Li. Is that a Chinese name? Yes. It's a Chinese, right. Okay, so if I say, well, Li is a mean person, and you don't know Li. When you think of Li mean Li. That's all that appears to your mind, because you have no clue who Li is. So as I said, Li may only be mean for an hour a day, which of a 24-hour day is not that long, right? But in your mind, you get a very fixed sense of who Li is. While if you were to tell me, let's say I'm Li, and I was mean for an hour now, and you tell me I'm mean, I'm thinking, yeah, but I'm more than that. I was also very generous an hour afterwards and very altruistic from 4 to 5, as an example. So I want to be recognized, and I would defend myself because I feel like this is an extreme. Okay, so knowing that, sometimes, of course, I may not have been mean, so maybe I more want to defend myself. So there's a lot to think about here. Understanding first that words are very limited, that the way I use words may influence others, and if it influences them in a negative way, I don't do myself a service, and I don't do them and the person I'm talking about a service. Right? I can actually create a lot of people disliking someone who could potentially be their good friend, generating anger and so forth. So I have to be very careful. Now, first of all, how do I react when someone criticizes me? How can I react? Understand that, first of all, these are just words. Okay, we know that. Sticks and stones can break my bones, but words can do no harm. Right? It's like beauty lies in the eye of the beholder. Yeah, right. Intellectually, it makes sense. Beauty lies in the eye of the beholder. But it doesn't feel that way. And sticks and stones can break my bones, but words can do no harm. Sometimes it feels like a stick would be much better than, right? So, but becoming aware that this is actually true. They're just words. If someone calls me mean, I feel it's negative. But where is the negative in the mean? Is it the M? Is it the E? Is it the A? Is it the N? Mean. Where's the mean? What is that, where's the meanness in the mean? If they have the intention to harm me, well, that doesn't harm me, it's their intention. It doesn't arise in my continuum, it arises in their continuum. So how does that harm me? Honestly, We don't think really in that moment, we just react. But if you analyze it, it's just a word. Secondly, if I really am mean, well, thank you for telling me. To really right away have this thought, analyze, was I mean? Am I mean sometimes? Well, thank you for telling me. I'm so glad, because sometimes I'm so busy being mean that I forget that I'm mean, right? It's kind of you're busy being mean and forget you are. If I'm not mean, there's something mistaken. They're misunderstood, right? I was maybe just with compassion telling them off or something, like the parents do sometimes, like when I was a teenager, my mom is so mean. She was telling me you have a curfew, you can't stay out the whole night, you're only 13, so you better come back home, right? And my mom was so mean. I mean, she was just doing this to help me. She didn't want me to go out and party and stuff. So the point is therefore thinking, if I really was mean, well, thank you for pointing it out. That's the first step to changing. It's like a doctor telling me, you better watch out, your blood pressure or your blood sugar or whatever. Am I saying the doctor is mean when they tell me my cholesterol is up, or I have an irregular heart? Do I say they're mean? No, I'm grateful. I'm not happy. Okay, I find out now there's something wrong with me, whereas previously I thought I was so healthy. Okay, but that's the first step to making adjustments to overcome this health issue. Actually, we should be just as grateful to someone telling us our mistake, right? Think, it's not inherently bad. It's pointing at something, and if I can find it in myself, that's the first change, the first step to recognizing it and make a change. I should be really grateful. So to have that distance, their motivation is their motivation. That's their, if it comes out of resentment, that is not my problem. Honestly, that's not my fault. If they are resentful, then I can't do anything. Or I could even think it's my responsibility to help them overcome that resentment. If I really generate compassion, then it's important for me to react calmly. Because if I react aggressively, I go, ah, and the other person goes, ah. Right? Yeah? It's often just subtle kind of changes in our body. You can tell, like, the brows, There are a lot of subtle, like Paul Eckhart, I think his name, no, Paul Ekman, this psychologist who works with subtle, and many of them were not aware. Subconsciously, they bring something in us. The other person goes, and we go, right? The mirror neurons, the mirror neuron. Yeah? We kind of take on what the other person, and we get angry, and that's it. So instead to listen, okay, and stay calm. Do it like the Japanese. Count to 5. The momentum was lost. So listen, breathe, 5 breaths in and out. And then the momentum, you've missed the momentum, and it's harder to be angry. I've been told when I was little, like my mom used to say, do it like the Japanese, don't get angry right away. When I was a teenager, I don't even know what the Japanese do it, but my mom always said it. Honestly, I never checked with a Japanese person. But anyway, the point is, so that gives you the time, is it true or not? And again, if it's true, well, thank you for pointing it out. Oh, that's good to know. Yeah. Oh, that could be. What's the problem being honest? The other person really appreciates it and they become softer right away. If you have an openness towards what they say, they're like, yeah, well, it wasn't that bad. Usually it's a bit like, they're a little upset, like you're mean, and you go, oh, there's something to what you said. Yeah, now that I think about it, it came across as mean. And I probably was mean. I was aggressive. And they go, yeah, but it's okay. It's like, that's it. That's right where the. So to stay calm, right? Take a time, take a moment, and then think about it. And then when they're wrong, you can always explain it. And if they don't believe you, say, oh, fine. Maybe it was subconscious. It's not. But why do I have to be right? Okay, maybe I came across that way. If it was honestly, unknowingly, if I wasn't sorry, I'm sorry for that. Yes, we can say that. And it takes care of it there. Right away you have your good friend back. Or you have a potential friend there. Okay, so we can all do that. Right? It's just a matter of taking the time to stay calm. And also considering the other person. Considering their feelings as well. But if now I want to tell someone else something, how am I going to go about it? Something that they need to know. I mean, it's good for them. Maybe they do something that could potentially harm them, that they're not aware of. So I remember a situation with my sister once. No, to start somewhere else. I remember Geshe Kelsang many years ago. I was teaching a class at the IBD, and I invited Geshe for some question and answers. At that time, Geshe goes through phases when he's better and when he's not so well. That time he wasn't well. So I only asked him for one short session. But Geshe has this style of teaching that it goes right to the heart, and I don't forget when he says certain things. They're so amazing. So Geshe, someone asked him, what about criticizing someone? Should I just criticize them? And Geshe-la's response was, in general, yes. In general, it's good to be truthful. But the problem is, when we criticize someone, usually we do it out of resentment. Oftentimes we don't speak up. We bear it, we leave it, because we think the other person may get upset. We don't say anything. But when our resentment grows stronger and stronger and stronger, and when we can no longer control our resentment, then we may criticize someone. So therefore we have this habit. Saying these words, resentment comes automatically. And he said, then it's extreme. Right away anger comes in, your words are no longer measured, they're no longer balanced, now they're extreme. So are you certain you can say it with a calm mind? No, that's the problem. Because it's usually something we've been thinking about before. We're not Rabina Korten, who just speaks her mind, right? She's calm, she's everything, she's direct, she's amazing. Rabina Korten is one of the greatest, I think, greatest Sangha members there is. Very rare to have someone like her. The thing is, I don't think she dwells on anything. She just says it. It's there, it's out there, that's it. She moves on, and usually, you move on as well. It's not like something that festers with her. She's too honest, she's too straightforward. So, therefore, but usually since we're not like her, I'm certainly far from being in any way like her. So it would remain with me, and when it comes out, okay. So, I remember the situation about my sister. She's not going to listen to it, so I can say this. My sister had this habit. She loved to have people over. She would invite people all the time. But she is terrible, or at that time, she could never be on time. So, when people came, the house was a mess. She hadn't cleaned yet. So everyone sat on the sofa and she was first cleaning. So people were really pissed off. They came there for a brunch. Nothing was done. They had to sit on the sofa, watch TV for an hour, and then they got their food. So no one wanted to go. Or people, they went, okay, but they were like, an hour watching TV, until she gets ready. She just had this habit. It's gone now, but it was pretty strong. So people didn't come. Family, you have like a patchwork family, since my parents are divorced and my father married. So this is patchwork family. My stepsisters and brothers and their families, they all live nearby. And no one wanted to come. So I knew if I told my sister, she's going to get furious at me. I mean, I'm her sister criticizing her. She always thinks my parents kind of love me more. It's difficult, complicated relationship, right? And so I had to be super careful with her. So I thought of what Geshe said, and I thought, well, since we perceive only being criticized, maybe I just tell her all the good things about her, and when she feels safe with me, then I can say it. So I sit down with her and I said, wow, I think what you do, and it's true, I wasn't faking it, because there's a lot of great stuff she does, of course, like everyone. I said, oh, this is so great, when you prepare something, when people come, you do such a great job. It looks always nice, and you work so hard, and you make these self-made buns. You don't buy them, like all this stuff that was really true. So she was like, oh, thank you. Oh, I'm so happy you're here, And I was like, yeah, it's great. There's one little thing, but actually it doesn't matter. It's one thing if that wasn't there, but the rest is great. And she said, what is it? And I'm like, no, it's nothing. And it's, everything else is so great. That little thing, it doesn't count for much. And then she wanted to know. She asked me, what is it? And I said, the problem is you're never ready when they come. Everything else is so wonderful, but we have to wait and then people don't show up. And she was like, oh, I can change that. I can change that. Oh, yeah, I just started an hour early. I can change that. And she changed. From that day to the next, she changed. So it was just the fact that if I had somehow told only that, she would have felt only the negative. Oh, she only ever notices that. She only criticizes me. She never sees the good stuff. And maybe she would have gone to the other extreme. Everyone had to wait for 2 hours. Who knows? I don't know. But I know what it feels like. I'm saying how she reacts because I react like that. So, but then as she felt understood, she felt appreciated. People saw her for what she did. And then this other thing was nothing. And that was such a big lesson. My sister gave me it was Geshe, of course, as well as the Dalai Lama, everyone, all my great teachers, leading me in that direction. And then my sister, who I have to be very careful with, as her older sister, who she always feels, like whatever. So this complicated relationship we've had, it's just there. And so it really worked. And then I thought, well, what about criticizing someone? Is it fair to say something negative about another person, to warn someone, to say, look, if you're with this person, watch out. They may get a little sensitive about this, that, and the other. Sometimes it is good to tell people if they go with someone else and they travel with them and they have this expectation it's going to be a paradise, and then with this person I know they have certain habits, to be careful around them. How can I do that? I don't want to say they're mean or something, or if they have their moments of being moody. I want to give a fuller picture. And I think the way you could do this, it works the same way. Tell them something positive about them. Say something like, well, they're really amazing, they're very generous, or they're very kind, and so forth. Like whatever you can think of, and we always can think of something. And then say, well, one thing I noticed, and I'm just a little careful, like we have our little things. And there's one thing I noticed in her case that, once you're aware of it, you can deal with it effectively. And then the other person doesn't get a negative. It just get a picture of a human being with faults and flaws and a lot of good sides. I think that's a fair thing to do, to always balance. If you say something negative about something, say 2 things that are positive. 2 things, at least, because our mind likes to clap, something negative, how nice. We always like it because then we don't feel so bad about our own faults, right? So I think it's a good balance to say 2 things that are good about them, start with that and end with that, and put the negative in the middle. Right? Yeah, I think that's just fair. And when you say this, the beauty is when you talk about their positive qualities, you generate love for them in that moment. So I can think of some people I find difficult, but if I tell other people, and I've made this rule, if I say something, I always make a point to at least at the end say something positive, so that the last memory is a positive one. And so when I say that, I feel close to them as well. When I say something negative, automatically my mind feels a slight resentment, depending on how strong it is, a slight resentment. Like Geshe Kelsang said, you're used to criticizing someone with resentment. And it's there, however subtle. So to move away from that, I then say something positive, something I appreciate, spend more time on it, and right away the feeling gets close to them, and the other person as well. I think that is so important. It is not fair if we say something to someone to make the other person dislike this person. And then we automatically, our image of this person, our label, the way we think about them, the way we label this person, we don't know them, it's always that negative quality accompanying our sense of this person. And that is not okay. Really, this is very harmful. I think we can all do this. It's a little complicated, sorry for all that blah blah, but I think it's really, really, I mean, talking bad about other people, it's terrible if the schism arises because of that, especially in the Dharma community. Therefore, I think it's extremely important. What do you have to stop? All right. So I think we can all do that and try it to some degree. Try it, and I think it's another extreme to always say everyone is great. That's silly. To not criticize someone at all, that's also silly. But again, to say something okay that we, and again, also what I think is important to say, that's how I see it. I could be wrong. This is my subjective sense of this person. I could be wrong, but it's just good to be aware and then finish with something positive. I'm trying to do this, okay? I mean, I could be, but sometimes I forget. But if I remember, I do this. Yeah. So I have to be honest. I have to be sure I don't lie to you. But I try. Okay. Great. So that's one thing. Something else that I think is really important, and I've noticed that you do this here. Very important to not discriminate between the different Dharma groups. Because it's very, very negative if we do. There's a Tibetan term that's very bad, chöpong. So if you criticize, for instance, the Kagyu tradition or the Nyingma tradition or other centers, create the impression, oh, this one is not so good, you shouldn't go there. That is chöpong, really bad. That's great non-virtue. It's abandoning the Dharma. And it happens. Now, for instance, His Holiness the Dalai Lama keeps telling us, be open to all religions. You don't have to have faith in them, but you should have respect for them. So sometimes in Dharma community, everyone has respect for Christianity, Islam, and Hinduism. But in the Buddhist groups, there's like, right? Oh, these Kagyus, right? It happens. So everyone is so tolerant because the Holiness talks about other religions, right? And if we don't listen well, His Holiness, of course, means also all the Buddhist groups. Now, the hardest bit comes, and I haven't heard the whole thing yet. Okay, so anyway, first is, of course, of all other religions, to have respect, to see how important they are for those living and practicing them. Extremely important. So we don't need to have faith in them, but we need to respect those who practice them, etc. But then within Buddhism, oftentimes, and this, I don't think it's Singaporeans, it's more people from Europe and in America. They say things like, oh, the Gyupa is really good, the other ones are weird. That's terrible. I hear this sometimes. They're not practicing. Oh, that's such a chöpong. I mean, that is the classic example of, or saying, Gelupas, they only like to study, only the Kagyus like to meditate. That's not true. That's not true. I mean, we studied the parts of the Kagyu tradition, and they also studied, they meditated, they debated. So they just use vocabulary sometimes slightly differently, so it seems contradictory, but they're really saying the same thing. So it's part of the Tibetan tradition. So therefore, it's all the Dharma. And the great practitioners, the heads of these different traditions, they're all amazing lamas, right? Geshe Kelsang Wangmo when he was still alive, Venerable Rinpoche when he was alive, Duchung Rinpoche, I mean, they're amazing. They're beyond description. His Holiness the Karmapa, His Holiness, of course, the Dalai Lama, the different lamas, amazing. So it's just we may not have the same connection, but many of you go to see Mingyur Rinpoche, which is great. He's from the Kagyu tradition. So I really like that there's this fluence. Like, I tell you one story. I once heard a story I'm not going to tell you which country it happened in. Some of you know, but I'm not going to say it in a group. In a particular Buddhist country, not Tibet, not India, but a particular Buddhist country, one of a very high Lama traveled there, very high Lama, who's passed away since then. And he went into a restaurant with some of his students who had invited him to the restaurant, who had invited him to this particular place. And then the sponsor had to go to the bathroom. And in the meantime, a student from a different Dharma center, a different Sangha group, saw Rinpoche, approached him, talked to him. And when the original sponsor came back and saw this rival group talking to Rinpoche, he just left. He didn't pay. He left Rinpoche in that restaurant. And this person who had now approached Rinpoche had to pay the bill and take him back to his hotel. It was a huge problem. Now, this is an extreme case. It is an extreme case. But this rivalry is terrible. Oh, this is so terrible. This is so terrible. We should really support each other. See that we're all the Sangha, whether we belong to ABC, TBC, NBC, LSC. I'm just making it up. KBC, and whatever, right? Whatever Buddhist center. It doesn't matter. And I find this is true. It's pretty fluent. People tell me they go to ABC, they go to TBC. Wonderful. Geshe Tukden Pesa, Geshe Los Doji Donjala, Mingyu Rinpoche. Wow. There's no chopon there. But now comes the hardest bit. Now I'm going to tell you something. And this comes from Geshe Tukden Pesa. Geshe Tukden Pesa says, what about the Shukden people? How do we think of the Shukden people? We sometimes hate them. They are also Dharma practitioners. And I thought, wow, of course, that doesn't mean we need to agree with them. It doesn't mean we need to propagate. But the resentment we sometimes feel towards Shukden practitioners, that's not okay either. They are Dharma practitioners, after all. After all, yes, they criticize His Holiness. But a good friend of mine, she's since passed away. I don't know whether some of you know her, Trisha Donnelly. You know Trisha Donnelly. Yeah, so she was at Root Institute for a long time. When I first came to Shita, 35 years ago. So when I came, she was the SBC there, and she said, people get so upset if someone criticizes Lama Zopa Rinpoche. We don't need to defend Lama Zopa Rinpoche. I thought, oh, yeah, why do we get so angry? The attachment to the Guru, no one is allowed to criticize my Guru. The Guru doesn't need to be defended. The Guru is beyond that. They don't care they're criticized. I mean, His Holiness gets criticized by the Chinese government and this and that, and he doesn't care. He has the greatest love and compassion for them, right? Praise for them, just so this kind of that leads to religious frictions. And with what Trisha said and what Geshe Tukden Pesa said, I thought, wow, they're Dharma practitioners like us. I don't need to follow what they do. I don't agree with it. I follow His Holiness. My allegiance lies with His Holiness. But they're Dharma brothers and sisters. How can I be resentful towards them? So Geshe Tukden Pesa, once again, he hit the nail on the head. Right? Isn't that beautiful? So we have to really watch our own mind. Is there resentment or not? It's kind of become acceptable to go on and on about these bloody Shukden. Right? No. They're practitioners just like us. I mean, they don't see Shukden as what His Holiness sees it. They see Shukden as a Buddha. So, and accordingly they act. And because we know His Holiness, of course, that's different. So again, we watch our mind. Attachment and resentment, I think, are very important to be careful of these. Yeah, that's something I wanted to say. So, I'll have 10 minutes of questions. We can continue with the questions after the break as well. So we have that continuity. And then let's see if there's something else I want to share with you, or whether you have more questions. We can see it when it comes, as we go along. But first of all, do you have any questions? Yes. I think Cecilia was first.
Thank you, Shima, for bringing up this issue about the Dharma brothers and sisters who practice the protector. Maybe you can explain this concept of pollution, which I actually don't understand, about associating or having... I really don't understand enough about it. If you have contact or you accept or interact with people who actively criticize or, abuse your guru. Yeah, I agree with you, we don't need to defend, His Holiness or Rinpoche, they don't need us to defend them. The Buddha said, you don't need to defend me either, right? But this idea of spiritual pollution, I really don't understand what it is and how it works. And I hear this term again and again.
Oh, I've never heard this word. I've never heard of spiritual pollution. And every time, then during my trip here, I sit next to a priest who kept telling me that only God is responsible for everything. I must have been spiritually really polluted. Because I wasn't disagreeing. I mean, at the very end I said, look, after everything you said, it sounds great. You've answered some of my questions, but I can't believe this, I'm still very much convinced, dependent on rising, my root guru is His Holiness and stuff. And we parted on this. But for 5 hours. So for all this time, I didn't feel spiritually polluted. I felt spiritually enriched because he answered some of my questions. He had a very nice way to talk about Christianity, which was different. It was very Indian, to be honest. It sounded very Indian philosophical. It could have been some Buddhist explanations, like the threefold, God, His Son, and the Holy Spirit. They were just emanations of the same entity. That was like, oops. But he is Indian, so therefore it explains his interpretation. I didn't feel polluted. Where did you hear this spiritual pollution? Did any of the teachers use it?
I think it wasn't from a teacher specifically, but from Dharma brothers and sisters who say, when you go, you don't go to places that are okay. For example, on YouTube, there was one teacher, who posted a video that gave the impression that he venerated Rinpoche, and that he went up to Kopan and so on and so forth, until someone identified and clarified that this particular so-and-so Rinpoche was a practitioner. Yeah. And there's this idea of, even if you go into a website, and you see Geshe Kelsang's name, it's like, that kind of, So, but I hear this not articulated by a teacher. And of course, even His Holiness would say, don't practice all this. And Rinpoche, Lama Yeshe, in the old days, before the pronouncement came from His Holiness, they all protected, they all practiced Shukman,
Even His Holiness?
Yes, even His Holiness. So, it's more from Dharma brothers and sisters that somehow, I can't even articulate it properly.
No, I think I get what you're saying.
Yeah, and then, I haven't completed. And then there was one High Lama, whose name I should not mention. He would say things like, if I see someone coming towards me and I know this person has criticized my guru, on the same side, I will cross the road and walk on the other side. Yeah, that kind of idea that you're very protective of your relationship with your guru. Yeah, protective, in that sense.
I mean, in the end, I don't know. I can only share with you my opinion. And I think what Geshe Kelsang said really made a lot of sense to me. The thing is with pollution, again, when we analyze what is really polluted, if I allow myself to be influenced, someone tells me, you should practice, and I start practicing it, yes, then I think, but that is up to me. That is up to me. But the thing is, I mean, a lot of Christians probably feel the Dalai Lama it's some kind of idol worship, what we do. And the Dalai Lama, something once happened. My father, when His Holiness came to Germany in 2014, I was invited by a center to attend some of the happenings, and also they had like other events and to participate. And they were so kind. The center who invited His Holiness also invited my parents to have an audience there. So they had an audience. My father had an audience with His Holiness, and my father's in a wheelchair. He can't speak. His left side is affected by a stroke, so his speech center is affected in such a way he hasn't been able to speak for more than 20 years now. And he saw His Holiness, and oh my God, I cannot talk too much about it. I start crying because I think I got everything from His Holiness I could ever expect, because what he gave to my father was incredible. My father didn't feel close to His Holiness, and then he did afterwards. Within 5 minutes, His Holiness put his forehead to my dad, and for the longest time he sat there, and my father's whole life changed. Now he has 3 pictures of His Holiness next to his bed. He bought these pictures the same day. He had them framed, and ever since that, and there's a big picture of His Holiness and my father on the desk where my father usually does his computer brain games. Keep his mind going. Unbelievable, unbelievable. And there was someone there who made a video. Just coincidentally, the video is the most beautiful thing there is. And at the very end, you see, and we were like, oh, like my stepmom was there, my mom was there, my dad was there, and I. And this guy doing the video. So His Holiness is just amazing, amazing, amazing. And then at the very end, my father is like this. He's like this. He's like crying. He's like happy. He doesn't know what to feel. And you see His Holiness at the very end walk into the elevator. It was out in a hall. It was just like His Holiness like a walkthrough. And we had like maybe 10 minutes. And His Holiness walks into the elevator. And we're all like all over the place because His Holiness is gone. But my dad is still watching His Holiness going into the elevator. And their bodyguards in front of His Holiness. And the camera is behind my dad. And we didn't see this. And my dad is the whole time waving at His Holiness, the whole time. And as the doors of the elevator close, somehow the bodyguards step to the side. You see His Holiness, and His Holiness is waving at my dad. It was the most beautiful, beautiful thing ever. And I was like so grateful to His Holiness, giving this to His Holiness. I told Geshe Kelsang a few days ago before I came, and he was crying. It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful, this story. Why did I tell you this story? Now I'm totally... I said that some people don't like His Holiness. Like but some people don't like His... Oh yeah, so they see there's this as idol worship. They see His Holiness, they see we're crazy. Oh yes, I remember. My sister, I showed her the photographs. The video shows the whole audience, but she hadn't seen that. She saw the whole video, that's right. And she couldn't understand the whole thing. She didn't understand the whole thing. She didn't pay much attention to it. And at the end, His Holiness stood with all of us to take a picture. And then my sister said something really weird. She said, oh no, now he wants to take a picture with the guy in the wheelchair. I was like, oh my God, don't you say that. Right? I mean, she saw His Holiness as just an ordinary person who wants to be photographed with famous people, with rock stars, and seeing His Holiness as ordinary. Couldn't see His Holiness for who He is. So then, when he got ready to stand there with my dad, he did it for us. To ask for have a picture with His Holiness, all of us. And my sister thought he wanted to take a picture with the guy in the wheelchair. And I thought, if my sister misunderstands, so many people misunderstand, right? So many people don't get it. Do I feel polluted by them? I mean, it's half my family. My sister, every time I go to her house, I pollute myself because that's how she looks at His Holiness. Although she changed, I tried to explain it to her, you know, a little gentler, and now a little, like, carefully, and now she's like, I really would have liked to meet him. That's how far she's now. But for the longest time, she thought the way she would be in that situation, right? Taking her own, of course, that's all she knew. Why do I want to take pictures with famous people? Because I want to be famous. That was her frame of thought. So you see, so many people misunderstand the Tibetans. I mean, when I walk here, Asians look at me with curiosity. Westerners go, who is this weird person? Who is this weird person? You know what's good about what happened to me when I first came to Dharamsala? The best thing happened to me. I saw for the first time a Western monk like me, pink head, you know, pinkish white, really weird with the robes. It doesn't really go with the robes. I mean, you know, the Tibetans look good in it. We look weird in it, right? I saw this guy. He had kind of reddish hair. It was even more red than in my case. And I thought, oh, what an idiot. What an idiot. Why does he have to dress like that? Why does he have to pretend to be a Tibetan? Oh, that's embarrassing. It made me angry. It really made me angry. The first Western monk I ever saw, I thought, oh, that was so ridiculous. Really made me angry. Now, that doesn't sound like anything positive, I know. The first nun I saw, that was Venerable Ingrid. Venerable Mark, it was Venerable Mark who I saw for the first time from Australia. Mark. Amazing monk. Then Venerable Ingrid, the nun forever. The first time I saw her, oh, of course she became a nun. Who would have married her? She has no hair. Because she had no hair, you know? I mean, I was like a bold woman. I mean, that was my total misperception. I was totally wrong, and I'm not proud of this. But I totally understand when someone on the road sees me and goes, I know exactly how they feel, and I have no problem. That was a good experience, that I had that experience. I mean, when people hear me say that, they go, what? That I had that experience? Most people don't have that. Most people are open enough and tolerant enough. I got angry. The first monk I saw, Mark, for instance, or later on Ingrid, who were, you know, long-term Sangha members, did an amazing job, but I didn't understand it. And so I had this resentment. It even made me angry. The good thing of this, it's not good that I got angry, but the good thing of the whole thing is that I understand other people. And I get it a lot. Like I said, if I walk here, the Westerners are like, they don't even want to look. Every now and then there's a slight smile, but that's very rare. Most just look away. Probably be embarrassed by this foreigner who dresses up weirdly. And again, I understand that. I totally understand it. So Asians are different. Like Singaporeans or many Indians recognize the Sikhs are great. They usually say hello because they know what it means. They come from the Punjab. So the other day I saw a group of Sikhs in a restaurant and they were very friendly. So it always depends on their knowledge, on their background. But the point I'm trying to make, that a lot of people have a lot of views. And if all of these views were to pollute me, oh gosh, I'd never be purified again. Of 8 billion people, how many people think what I do is totally crazy? Right? I mean, there's no way I could ever purify that. So, in the end, I don't see it that way. I think this person may have had a good reason to do so. I mean, sometimes what the lamas say, they say it to certain people and it helps those people, and I don't want to contradict it. But I can only give you my own view. I think, and His Holiness, the last thing before the break, when His Holiness was in Hamburg, people had the chance to walk up to the microphone and ask questions. And there was one guy who started off really nicely, very nicely. He said like, oh, Your Holiness, thank you for coming. And then suddenly he went like, he said something like, your teacher was Chijan Rinpoche, wasn't he? and your other teacher was what's his name? Monka Rinpoche, for instance. So all these are Shukti practitioners. Why are you? What is going on? And His Holiness very patiently answered in a very beautiful and compassionate way. And then this person just went, "Why are you lying? Why are you lying? Why are you lying?" Right in the microphone. And His Holiness just went, "I'm not lying." And he was so kind and compassionate towards them. And this guy, he was disarmed. So all he could say was, "Why are you lying? Why are you lying?" And then the people said, "Woo, get away!" And they basically got him off the mic. But it was like, I think he was himself touched by His Holiness' compassion. And I remember also this video when the Shukden people were like, "Dalai Lama, Dalai Lama," like, stop lying, and whatever they said. And I remember this one video when His Holiness walked past them and compassionately bowed down. And some of them bowed down back. And then when His Holiness was past, "Stop lying, stop lying." So they were touched, His Holiness completely sincere. He loved them from the depth of His heart, and He showed His compassion. And really, it was totally sincere. It was not fake. And they were moved. They couldn't help it. They stopped shouting, breathed respectfully, and once he was gone. I love that video. I've watched it 2 or 3 times. It's really beautiful. So this is His Holiness is our example. That's how we should be. That's what we should do. Okay, on that note, we'll take a break until 3 minutes.